We're going to stand here. We're not running or anything, okay? One question at a time.
How do you feel, Al?
We're amazed. The jury rejected 95% of the government's case. They obviously did not believe Robert Powell. They obviously did not believe Jill Moran. They rejected a large portion of the case, even with regards to Robert Miracle. They rejected most of the theories regarding kickbacks and bribes. The government really got hurt today on this entire case. And it stands for the proposition that what Mark Ciavarella said all along was true. He never took a kickback, he never took a bribe, and he never extorted Robert Powell. And the government affirmed him on all three things. This is not a cash for kids case.
You know, Greg, as long as I've known you, you've been fighting your case. You've said you would, you have. And, you know, I've seen now since the videos we did with Sonny, when people ask for your help, you commit. You really care, and you really try to help people. You know, we saw that with Sonny, and now this gentleman, Mark Ciavarella, someone reached out to you to give him a hand as well with his case. How did this come about?
Somebody in Pennsylvania had watched a couple of the Sonny Franzese videos, and they were kind of impressed that I kept writing letters and got letters back. And I had talked to them, on the phone, and they knew Mark Ciavarella, and they thought he got a very, bad break. They didn't think he was 100%, innocent, but he paid some price for that cash for kids scandal. Soon after, I got a book from Lorna Graham, who was a federal prosecutor. It was called Presumption of Guilt. And she claims prosecutors never proved the scandal ever happened, but the lead prosecutor continued, to give it lip service when no evidence was provided. And the media falsely reported that Ciavarella was convicted for his scheme to jail juveniles for profit. So I read the book with interest, and I looked at this guy, and I said to myself, at one time before he became a judge, he was a pretty successful lawyer. He was involved in a lot of, things in the community, I guess, civic activities and what have you. Very well liked. And he became a judge. And, when you're in the court system, everybody is stealing. Believe me when I tell you, prosecutors, judges, people are getting paid off. Anyway, he got caught up in something, and he got sentenced to 28 years in jail. He paid some price. First of all, his wife had left him soon after the arrest and trial. He lost his house. He had to move in with his daughter. They took all his pension money that he had saved. It was like, I don't know, close to $500,000. Whatever friends he had jumped ship. And now he was just a number in there, sitting in jail, doing 28 years. He's been in jail 13 years. I think there comes a time when punishment is enough. Even in my case, a quarter gram of coke. How long are you going to keep me in jail? You're going to keep me in jail for a decade and a half. There's no reasoning behind it. It should end.
I think that we had a conspiracy of silence going on in Luzerne County.
Marcia Levick, the public interest lawyer who helped break the case.
There were officers of the court, there were members of the district attorney's office, members of probation, private lawyers, public defenders who were in the courtroom every day. And they had to know what was happening, and whether it was by virtue of intimidation or an unwillingness to get involved, the fact remains that nobody stood up.
Now, who were the other players in this entire scandal?
There was another judge, Conahan. He got Michael Conahan. He got 17 and a half years. In 2020, due to the coronavirus concerns, he was released on a temporary furlough, and he's living in home confinement. It doesn't look like they're going to put him back in jail. The co-owners and builders of the private prisons were Robert Miracle. He was sentenced to 1 year. Robert Powell, he was sentenced to 18 months in jail. And when you have a lot of money like these guys, you have, tens and tens of millions of dollars, you just seem not to get a big sentence. I think that these guys, initiated the whole scam and everything else, and they got a slap on the wrist. They gave Mark Ciavarella, all the time in the world, 28 years. And one other thing I want to say was this, you know, some of the jurors have reached out in newspaper articles saying that, the sentence that he got was, very, very excessive given the charges for which he was convicted of. Uh,
Yes, we have an article right here. Patricia Cinco, she was one of the jurors on his case and said that the 28-year prison sentence was excessive for what he was actually convicted of.
a woman says, we were not jurors on a kids for cash case. That was not our trial. That was not what our trial was about. One of the biggest mistakes Mark Ciavarella made was Sonny had made a similar mistake. He was probably too old to realize it. Was you don't talk to the media. Every time the media tried to talk to uh, Michael Conahan or Robert Powell or Robert Miracle, they put their hands over their face. They rushed into a car. They didn't say a word. But when they approached Mark Ciavarella, he was very open, very friendly, very honest, and admitted his guilt in taking money and taking some bribes and what have you. And it cost them. They put a face on this case, and he became that face.
Now, Mark has actually contacted you back. You guys have been in correspondence for about a little over a year, I think. And
More like about 18, yeah, about a year and a half. He basically writes me 3, 4 times a month. I write him back. If I have a few extra dollars, I'll send him a money order, a small money order. He's very appreciative of anything anyone does for him.
from the looks of it, he's actually been giving you a bit of legal advice. Tell me about that. What is he helping you through?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of the lawyers that I had, or they don't want to like take on the world. With my case, it's so dirty that so many people would go down and heads would roll or whatever, and nobody really wants to really get involved or really want to help me. I sent him, parts of my transcripts. I can't send him the whole thing, in federal prison. They kind of frown about that. I don't want to cause any problems, but I sent him a couple of pages, and what I did was it wasn't actual trial transcripts. It was, but I just rewrote it into a letter, and I talked to him about an amendment of my indictment during trial. I was only charged by the police with possession, even though it wasn't on me. Somebody said it was mine, my brother and my mother. And I was charged with basically a misdemeanor. That was it. And my case, because of my attorney, it went to the grand jury. It wasn't even supposed to go to the grand jury, but the initial weight was lied about. It was a little bit over a felony, according to the prosecutor. So when my case went to the grand jury, a prosecutor purposely misled the grand jury, telling them that they found a bag of cocaine the size of a golf ball. That's a very big difference between a speck of cocaine, which they actually found, along with hundreds of glassine envelopes and gelatin capsules for the packaging and sale of cocaine. The jurors, of course, believed the prosecutor was honest, but she was not. Nevertheless, they indicted me on a Class B felony for intent to sell. So my case makes it to trial, and now there's a big problem because the police never found packaging equipment. They never found a bag of cocaine the size of a golf ball, and everything reads off your grand jury indictment. So now the prosecutor would have to say that they found a bag of cocaine the size of a golf ball, they found all this packaging equipment. Then when they asked the police what they found, that who actually executed the search warrant, they don't have any of that packaging equipment. They don't have a bag of cocaine the size of a golf ball, so they would never convict me. So what the prosecutor decided to do was to amend my grand jury indictment during trial, which never, ever happens. In fact, my lawyer, who was tag teaming with her against me, reminded her saying, don't you have an amendment to make? And she says, yes, I do. Uh, Mark, who looked at this case, who was an experienced trial lawyer and judge, read the transcript with, in his words, interest and disgust. According to him and others, the judge was letting my lawyer know there was a serious problem with the amendment and that he should object. He said the lawyer was totally incompetent or in the pocket of someone. The objection by my lawyer would have allowed the judge to deny the motion and indicate the state cannot proceed, and he would have to dismiss the indictment. I would then have to go back to the grand jury to bring charges that would have to be factually proven. And at the worst, I was looking at was a misdemeanor if you believed it was my cocaine or not. No crime was ever committed on that day. Mark makes an interesting point. He said, obviously, the lawyer was, he said, in the prosecutor's pocket. He was almost right. You have to follow the money. Why would this lawyer, Robert Peck, do this? Let me give you a little history before I explain. Robert Peck was an 18B court-assigned attorney. Those guys are like Skid Row of the judicial system. They get cases from the county court. They don't get cases on their own because they don't put the work in. They're terrible. They're lazy. So they get these cases from the county court, these 18B cases. And what they do is they don't get much money, from the state. They get up to like $75 an hour, and they try to, make deals. For instance, Robert Peck would have like an 18B case, and he'd tell a kid's family, they're not really paying me that much, but I'm really fighting for your son and stuff like that. And he squeezed some money out of, the defendant's family, which is illegal. But he did it time and time again. So I hired Mr. Peck. I just met him in the bullpen when I was arrested. He looked like a grandfatherly type guy and what have you. I didn't think it was a big case. And I hired him. And he's a good liar. I did not know that he did not have any private cases. He had no private cases. I can't even say he had one. He had no private cases for years. He was just a local 18B court-appointed attorney. He was a sellout artist. And if you follow the money, he took money from my mother. We know that. He took a check for $10,000 from the witness against me. He should have been disbarred for that. He wasn't. He also got paid by the 18B assigned counsel program illegally. He put in vouchers and signed my name to things. So did another lawyer that I had in Nassau County. So you just have to follow the money. I think one day that this is going to be a very, very big case once we get the book out and what have you about how they're just easily ripping off the taxpayers in the 18B court-assigned counsel program.
Have you spoken to any of Mark's family? One thing we had found is something that his daughter has been doing. Have you spoken to her?
I haven't spoken to her, but I've done some research on, social media, and Mark has mentioned her a couple of times. He told me that, she wrote President Trump to get him a time cut, get him time served. She did fight for him, and, she believes he's honest on a lot of things. I mean, that he's guilty on some things, in which Mark agrees. She's a lawyer. From what I see, she's a lawyer. She's a writer. She's written a book. She started an organization to help, I guess, juvenile delinquents, to avoid jail. So she's given back to the community, and she seems like a pretty good person.
So how is Mark doing now? He's been in there. How long has he been in there now?
I think he's going on his 14th year now. 13 and a half, 14 years. I tell you the truth, he's held up better than I did. I took my case very, very bad. I would never stop complaining, and I was depressed at times. He's always upbeat, and he does his walking every day, walks 5 miles every day, watches what he eats, he exercises a little bit. he gets along with the other inmates, and he's very lucky and fortunate that they see him as a good guy and a person who could, you know, if they needed help legally or advice, he would help them. So I give him a lot of credit. You know, he one of the things I like about him is that he doesn't make any bones about it. He's taken some money. He didn't pay taxes. He did some things, and there's a lot of things that he didn't do. Uh, he beat a lot of the charges initially. I think it was like a 28 count indictment or something, and most of the counts were dismissed. Then he went back on appeal, I think in 2013, and another count was dropped. And then a few years later, 3 more counts were dropped. And the sentencing judge went back to the sentencing judge. He still wouldn't move to even take a year or two off his sentence. And I just think that, you know, we don't need 80 and 90-year-old men in jail. We just don't, especially a guy that, you know, he's not going to come out and rape someone. He's not going to stick a gun in somebody's face or nothing like that. He'll have a pension when he comes out. He'll be all right, you know? So it's not like a worry that he's going to commit another crime. It's not going to happen. He's not going to be a lawyer anymore. He's not going to be a judge anymore. He'll probably just retire.
Right.
You know, don't get me wrong, too. There's a lot of judges that are bad people. There's a lot of lawyers that are bad people. And I don't know what it is about the criminal justice system that they have a feeling of entitlement that, you know, most lawyers that are that put in some work and or, you know, even average or have a few years trial experience, they make $250,000, $300,000 easy a year. So you got a judge, you know, making $120,000 a year, most likely because he was a failed lawyer and he became a judge. And they just have this feeling like, you know, I'm a judge, I'm a lawyer, you know, I should be getting more than this. And they get money every step of the way. I really think that Mark, even from what the juror said, that he didn't go in there, he didn't go in the court system thinking, hey man, I'm going to steal or I'm going to do something, you know, illegally or whatever. I think that he was surrounded by basically criminals, you know, the court stenographers, the prosecutors, you know, other judges, that everybody's like stealing. And you know, if you're not one of them, you have a way of like not being there. Believe me, you know. You know, the juror even said that she felt that Ciavarella was guilty by association, that he was not completely clean, she said, but we didn't believe Ciavarella knew the depth of what was going on. And she believed that, you know, Michael Conahan, the other judge, was the main player in the case, and he just got caught up in the scheme, like I said. But either way, you know, whatever he did, you know, we make mistakes in life. We're human beings. And you know what? The media, the media is terrible. Like I was going to say about Sonny, you know, Sonny wanted to tell his story about the criminal court system, how corrupt they were and stuff like that. And you know, Newsday comes along and they tell him, yeah, we're gonna put your story out there and stuff like that. And then the next thing you know, he's a monster. His son is a good kid. His son, you know, was manipulated by the father. The father destroyed the whole family. And you know, they made him look bad. You know, I wish I was there with Sonny at that time because that would have never happened. You know, with the media.
Yeah,
So the
it's
media, basically, the media, you know, made this case bigger than what it was, and they made Mark Ciavarella. They had to put a face on it, and he was the face, unfortunately. You know, I think he deserved time in jail. I think any public official that's involved in anything should get some jail time. You know, I would say 5 years is like taking a lung from someone, and you're definitely going to learn your lesson. It'll send a message to everybody. But to give everybody a slap on the wrist, 18 months, a year, and they're out in 6 months, and this guy's sitting in there, you know, for decades, you know, basically a life sentence. He went in there when he's 60. He was going to come out when he's 88. It's ridiculous.
yeah, it's definitely a great lesson on not talking to the media.
You know,
especially.
one thing I want to say about the media too is this. At Sonny's trial, I made an outburst to the judge, and I actually cursed out the FBI agents, and they put their heads down and said, well, we just do what our bosses tell us to do, which is probably right. They were kind of ashamed, having to testify and, at his sentencing about Sonny and stuff like that. A 96-year-old man, 95, whatever he was. So anyway, when I made the objection, a bunch of newspaper people surrounded me. And one guy, John Marzulli, he was from the Daily News. He writes about, mafia and stuff like that, known writer. He gave me his card. He said, if you ever have anything about, Sonny or whatever, let me know. So I kept his card for like years. And when I was able, you know, not that I did it, but I put forth the effort to get Sonny out of jail, to get the detainers dropped. I called up John Marzulli and I said, John, Sonny has a date now. All the detainers were dropped. And he said, man, I owe you, and he asked me for my name and everything again. And I gave it to him and stuff like that. I explained who I was. And the next friggin' day, there's a 2-page article about, it said, that Sonny got a compassionate release. And it said in the article that, Michael Franzese had got a lawyer for Sonny and the family was working on getting him out of jail. My name's never mentioned, just like the Newsday article, the bullshit Newsday articles that came out, the videos and stuff like that. They talked to everybody was FBI agents, people willing to lie, and they never talked to me, which, they didn't want the truth, put it that way. So the media
No.
doesn't do you any favors. It's always in their best interest to make the story look more sensational or something.
So before I let you go, what do you think it would take for Mark to be released before his expected parole date?
I think that he has a perfect prison record. He hasn't had any fights, never caught with drugs. He didn't take any food out of the mess hall or any stupid stuff like that. He has some achievements in there. Um, he's one person that I know of out of lawyers, county executives, police chiefs who were arrested. They get convicted in trial. The evidence is clear against them, and they never show any remorse. They never admit any guilt. They just don't say anything. And he has been very outspoken and said, yeah, I made some mistakes. I took some money. I didn't pay taxes and stuff like that. And I was a little harsh on some of the kids, It's the way he was brought up. His father was very harsh with punishment and stuff with him. And I'm sure he would have done things a little bit different. But he's in jail 14 years. He's 74 years old. Um, he suffered enough, like I said. His wife left him. He lost his house. All his friends jumped ship. Um, it's pretty sad, and I don't think there's any reason to keep him in there any longer. I honestly believe that I'll help him. So I'll continue to write letters to different people. Um, one day I think I'll be in a better position to actually talk to somebody in person. But I'll keep fighting for him, and I'll give him hope. If you ever seen the movie, what was that movie's name? The Hurricane. The guy was sitting in jail. Reuben Hurricane Carter was sitting in jail for decades, and some strangers came along and they opened up the case for him. They helped him get out of jail. So who knows? I can't get his conviction overturned. I can't. Even if I had money to go through all those thousands of pages of transcripts and stuff like that would cost tens and tens of thousands of dollars. But I got what I could. I'm trying to fight with, trying to show some support to him, and I think he'll get out of jail. I think he'll get out of jail. I don't think he'll do more than a couple more years. You know, it's too much time.
Well, if
And
that's the
when the
case,
and when the jurors say, "Hey, this sentence was very excessive," and if he actually put kids in jail for cash, then they should have charged him with that. But they didn't have any evidence that he actually did that. He was convicted of other financial crimes. So I think he has a good shot. I think he has a good shot. But you know what? When you go to jail after a while, you're just a number. You know, people forget about you. You're you know, out of sight, out of mind. And you have to remind people, like, listen, man, this guy's sitting in jail here 14, 15, 16 years. It's enough already, especially the fact that the odds of him committing another crime when he comes out of jail, you have a better chance of hitting Mega Millions than him committing a crime. That's obvious. I think that's a big point. You don't even Sonny, getting him out of jail, his age, this and that, what have you. There was always this thought like, well, if we let him out, he might not be physically able to do anything, but he can get to a phone, he can, say something to somebody, he can get involved in stuff. But this guy, there's no way in hell that he'll ever get involved in anything again. He
I
just
think
wants to see his grandchildren. He hasn't even really seen his grandchildren. He doesn't really see his family that much. His daughter visits him, from what I see, like when she can, and who knows how much that is. When you're in Kentucky and your family's living, say, in Pennsylvania, and they have their lives and their jobs and their kids and stuff like that. It's really hard. I don't think he gets many visitors.
no, but I'm sure he really appreciates your friendship, and I think if he does manage to get released early, I can say with confidence that you will be a big part of that. I want to thank you for talking about this today. Thank you guys for listening. Hopefully, we have some updates. We can share them in a timely manner. Yeah. All right, Greg. It was
All
good
right,
talking
thanks,
to
Nick.
you.
Bye.